Why are we so drawn to what we can't have? Why do smart, rational people risk everything, love, trust, reputation, even family, for a relationship they know is off limits? It's easy to judge from the outside. But inside that storm, it doesn't feel like a choice, it feels like gravity. An invisible pull that whispers, just once won't hurt. And before they know it, they're in too deep. See, forbidden relationships aren't always about lust. Sometimes they're about validation, the hunger to feel wanted again. Sometimes it's loneliness, craving someone who finally sees you. And sometimes it's the thrill of danger, that addictive rush that makes people feel alive when life has gone dull. But here's the truth most people never admit. When someone gets addicted to the forbidden, they're not chasing another person. They're chasing a feeling they lost within themselves. In today's video, we're breaking down the 7 types of people who get addicted to forbidden relationships, and the deep psychology behind why they do it. Each type reveals a different emotional need, from the ones who crave power, to the ones who crave healing, to the ones who simply crave attention. Stay till the end because number 7 might surprise you. It's the one most people never see coming, yet it's the most common of all. And if you're someone who loves decoding real human behavior and understanding the hidden side of relationships, not the sugar-coated stuff but the truth, then make sure you subscribe to this channel. Because here, we don't talk about fairy tales. We talk about why people really do what they do. Let's start with the psychology behind it, because understanding why we're drawn to forbidden relationships is the key to understanding the people who fall into them. At its core, forbidden love hijacks the brain's reward system, the same system that responds to addiction. It's the same neurological pathway that lights up when someone takes a risk, wins a bet, or tastes something they've been told they can't have. In other words, the moment something becomes off-limits, your brain doesn't calm down. It goes into overdrive. The chemical behind that reaction is dopamine, the I want it even more neurotransmitter. According to a study from the University of Colorado, when people are told they can't have something, whether it's food, attention, or love, dopamine levels spike. That spike doesn't happen when you get what you want. It happens when you're chasing it. That's why the forbidden feels magnetic. It's not just emotional attraction, it's a biological high. And then comes the other half of the equation, stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. These chemicals heighten arousal and focus, which the brain confuses with love or passion. The secrecy, the guilt, the risk of being caught, all of that amplifies the emotional intensity. To put it simply, the brain mistakes stress plus excitement for deep connection. That's why these relationships can feel more alive, more real, even though they're built on illusion. But here's what most people miss. The attraction isn't necessarily toward the person who's forbidden. It's toward the feeling of breaking the rule, the emotional danger, the thrill of being chosen in a place where they shouldn't be. So no, it's not just emotional weakness. It's neurological wiring, combined with unmet emotional needs. And the people most vulnerable to it, they often don't realize they're chasing the forbidden, until it's too late. So let's break it down. Here are the 7 types of people most likely to fall into forbidden relationships, and what they're really searching for beneath the surface. Let's start with the first type, the nostalgic ex. They're not addicted to the person. They're addicted to the memory of who they used to be with that person. See, when life starts to feel empty or uncertain, the mind has a strange defense mechanism. It romanticizes the past. It edits out the pain, the arguments, the nights you cried yourself to sleep, and replaces them with highlights. The laughter. The inside jokes. The way they used to look at you before everything fell apart. And slowly, your brain starts whispering a dangerous story. Maybe we were meant to be. Maybe we just met at the wrong time. But here's the truth, nostalgia doesn't tell you what happened. It tells you what you wish had happened. It paints the past in golden tones because the present feels dull. Psychologically, this is called rosy retrospection. It's when your brain exaggerates positive memories to protect you from emotional discomfort. So instead of facing loneliness, regret, or boredom, you start chasing an illusion of comfort, a familiar version of love that no longer exists. That's why people often go back to their exes when they're vulnerable. Not because they still love them, but because they miss the version of themselves they used to be in that relationship. The confident one. The desired one. The one who felt seen. They're not searching for their ex. They're searching for themselves. Psychology tip. Nostalgia is powerful, but it's not truth, it's emotion disguised as destiny. It convinces you that comfort equals compatibility. But that's rarely the case. So if you ever feel that pull to go back to someone from your past, ask yourself this. Do you really miss them, or do you just miss who you were when they loved you? Be honest, have you ever been tempted to go back to someone just because the past suddenly felt safe again? Drop a yes or no in the comments. No judgment here, we've all been there. 2. The power player. This type doesn't chase people, they chase power. They live for the thrill of being desired, respected, or obeyed. Whether it's a boss, a mentor, or someone who just loves having emotional leverage, they're addicted to the feeling of being in control. Every secret text, every subtle flirtation, every boundary crossed in the name of connection, it's not about love. It's about validation. They enjoy knowing they can make someone bend, hesitate, or break their own rules. It's a quiet form of domination dressed up as intimacy. And the irony. They often convince themselves they're the victim of their own influence, saying things like, "I didn't mean for it to happen," when in truth, they orchestrated every move. Psychology tip. Power players operate from what psychologists call ego-driven attachment. They don't seek love for emotional depth, they seek it for reinforcement. Each admirer becomes a mirror that reflects how important, desirable, or influential they are. Men in power often mistake admiration for attraction, they assume respect equals desire. Women in power, on the other hand, sometimes mistake emotional dependency for loyalty, believing that if someone needs them, it must be love. In both cases, control becomes the currency, and true connection never stands a chance. Have you ever met someone who only seemed interested when they had the upper hand? Type yes if you've seen that kind of power play up close. 3. The attention-starved. This type isn't searching for love, they're searching for visibility. They've spent so long feeling unseen, unheard, or underappreciated that attention itself becomes intoxicating. Maybe they're in a relationship where affection faded years ago. Maybe they grew up being the responsible one, the one who gives but rarely receives. Either way, they've learned to survive on emotional scraps. Then suddenly, someone new notices them. They laugh at their jokes. They say, "You deserve better." They see the small details others ignore, the effort, the kindness, the quiet strength. And for a moment, it feels like sunlight after living in the dark. But here's the truth, it's not love they're feeling. It's relief. Relief from invisibility. Relief from being emotionally starved. The attention feels like oxygen because it temporarily fills a void that's been there for years. Psychology tip. When you're emotionally hungry, the brain releases dopamine just from being noticed. That spark isn't always chemistry, sometimes it's just validation hitting the bloodstream. And that's where the danger begins, because when you're starving, even crumbs look like a feast. Almost any attention can start to feel like love, and that illusion can lead people into emotional affairs, impulsive decisions, or even self-sabotage. Have you ever mistaken attention for connection, only to realize later it wasn't real intimacy? Be honest, type I have, if that ever happened to you. 4. The emotional escapist. This one is subtle, and it's happening everywhere. It doesn't start with flirting. It starts with understanding. A DM reply that says, "I get you." A conversation that feels easier, lighter, more validating than the one at home. They start venting about their bad day, their frustrations, maybe even their partner. At first it feels innocent, just someone who listens. But slowly the messages get deeper, more frequent, more emotionally charged. They begin waiting for that notification, buzz the way others wait for a text from their crush. This isn't physical cheating, it's psychological intimacy without responsibility. It's the kind of bond that feels safe because it's digital, but it's every bit as real as a touch. The mind can't tell the difference, it still releases dopamine, oxytocin, and attachment hormones. That's why the pull feels so strong. They tell themselves it's harmless. We're just talking. But the truth? They're quietly replacing their partner, emotionally, mentally, even spiritually. The forbidden part isn't the messages. It's the secret, the emotional energy that should be invested in their real relationship being spent elsewhere. Psychology tip. Emotional affairs often begin when communication at home feels unsafe or unsatisfying. People don't cheat for excitement, they cheat for escape. Have you ever seen emotional cheating destroy a real relationship? Or maybe experienced that blurry line between just chatting and something deeper? Tell me in the comments, how do you define the boundary? 5. The provider and dream dealer. This type doesn't lead with charm, they lead with offers. Money, mentorship, opportunities, protection. They don't flirt, they fund dreams. It starts innocently. Maybe they help someone through a tough time. Pay a bill. Offer guidance. Open a door that no one else could. And in return, they get admiration, attention, emotional gratitude. But underneath that help lies something deeper, control. They create a dynamic where the other person starts to rely on them, financially, emotionally, or even professionally. It's not love they're addicted to, it's the feeling of being indispensable. They want to be the hero, the rescuer, but only as long as the other person stays dependent. Here's the dangerous part. The more forbidden the relationship, the stronger the control becomes. Because secrecy multiplies dependency, now both sides have something to lose. One feels trapped by obligation, the other feels powerful through provision. The provider or dream dealer often tells themselves, "I'm just helping. I'm being generous." But in reality, they're feeding a deeper need, the addiction to being needed. Psychology insight. This is known as a codependent power loop. The giver gains self-worth through being essential, while the receiver trades autonomy for safety. Both end up trapped, one by control, the other by comfort. And sometimes, this dynamic flips, instead of giving too much, the next type takes too much. And they use emotional chaos as their way of feeling alive. 6. The healer. This one is tricky because on the surface, they seem like the good guy. They're the listener. The comforter. The person who says, "You can talk to me about anything." And at first it feels safe, even therapeutic. They show up when you're vulnerable, maybe after a breakup, a fight, or during a lonely phase in your relationship. They offer understanding, warmth, and validation. And you start thinking, finally, someone who actually gets me. But here's the hidden danger, many healers aren't really trying to heal you. They're studying you. They listen to your pain not to fix it, but to figure out where the emotional cracks are. They mirror your emotions perfectly, creating the illusion of deep connection, when in truth, they're quietly stepping into the emotional space your partner once occupied. It's not always intentional manipulation. Some healers are genuinely drawn to pain, because fixing broken people makes them feel important, wanted, even powerful. But it's a slippery slope. The line between comfort and chemistry starts to blur. Late-night conversations turn into private confessions. And before you realize it, healing has turned into bonding. Psychology calls this the rescuer complex. It's the emotional high of saving someone, especially when it's forbidden. They're addicted not to love, but to the role of being the savior. And when that dynamic breaks, it often ends in chaos. Because once the wounded person starts to heal, the healer loses their purpose. And the whole relationship collapses under its own emotional weight. But there's one more type, and it's the most unpredictable of all. Because this person doesn't chase forbidden love for validation, power, or control. They do it for the thrill of danger itself. 7. The patient opportunist. This is the most dangerous type, not because they're aggressive but because they're strategic. They don't chase. They wait. They could be a friend, a coworker, maybe even a family acquaintance who's always just around. They play the long game. They watch. They listen. They learn what makes you feel seen, and what makes you feel neglected. When life gets heavy, maybe your relationship is struggling, your confidence drops, or you feel emotionally isolated, they quietly step in. A text here. A comforting talk there. Nothing ever seems inappropriate. But each innocent conversation builds emotional intimacy. And here's the psychological trap. Because they were there during your pain, your brain starts to trust them automatically. It's called emotional transference. You begin associating them with comfort and safety, even if deep down, you know it's wrong. They don't have to seduce you directly. They just position themselves to be there when your defenses are weakest. And by the time you realize what's happening, you've already crossed the line emotionally, sometimes even physically. They win not by pursuing, but by waiting. And that's what makes them so hard to recognize, and even harder to resist. Now that we've covered all 7 types, let's bring it together, because the psychology behind these patterns reveals something much deeper about human nature itself. So let's recap. People get addicted to forbidden relationships not because they're evil, but because they're emotionally unfulfilled, psychologically wired for thrill, or searching for something they lost within themselves. The forbidden becomes a mirror, reflecting the parts of us that feel unloved, unseen, or untamed. But no matter how thrilling it feels in the moment, every forbidden relationship has one thing in common. It starts with excitement and ends with erosion. So, what do you think? Do people cheat because they're unhappy, or because they're addicted to attention and validation? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I want to hear your perspective. And if you found this video eye-opening, give it a like, share it with someone who loves relationship psychology, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dive videos every week. Remember, forbidden love isn't always about desire. Sometimes it's just a reflection of our own emptiness waiting to be filled. Understand that, and you won't just protect your relationship. You'll protect your peace.